Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, Howard, for putting this together. And huge thank you for Miranda for joining us this evening. So just a bit of a backstory, really. We asked Ecology Resources at the time to complete some like an ecological assessment of an event for us, so that we had some empirical data to be able to talk about our footprints and our effect on the environments in which we orienteer. That work was passed to Miranda, who now works for Ecology Resources, didn't at the time. So it's Miranda Cowan who's with us this evening. Miranda undertook the work on the middle distance event at the JK in the lakes in Easter of 23. So we just felt it was really important that Miranda got the opportunity to explain her findings. She visited the site 3 times for us, and we will be working with Miranda in the future to look at other different areas in which we orientate, because as Miranda will probably tell you, it was quite dry, I believe, at the time. So obviously there's different effects of what, depending on what's happening with the weather. Anyway, I will hand over to Miranda. As Joe says, we'll take questions at the end, but Miranda's going to run through some slides with us just to tell us her findings from the assessment. Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you, Emma, and hello, everybody. I have got just 8 slides to give a nice little overview, and so I'll just press my share screen. Just going to end that a minute. Hold on. Okay, can you hear me okay? Still?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that, actually. So,
yeah.
So this was a really interesting project for me to come along to, and it's the first time I understand that we have done this. Is that right, Emma, in terms of looking at the ecology of an event like this? So this opportunity provided an initial broad brush overview of what potentially we could do in the future in terms of how we can look at the ecology pre-event and look at the potential impacts, and then how can events be planned post the findings of a survey such as this. So this I knew this site as lands at Finthwaite and Westland Heights, and it was just to the west of Windermere Lake, and was completed in the summer of 2023, comprising of 3 survey visits. This area is really quite remote, so there's like limited parking and a very undulating landscape. So it was quite interesting to explore for me. So I was presented with this map here, plus this high dam, and all of these little circles I believed were your control points, which on the first visit I didn't have, because I understand that some of these events have some element of confidentiality. So I took it upon myself on my first visit, to do this zigzag approach of looking at the site to get a feel of what the broad habitats were. But primarily the key concern here, because Emma had been in consultation with Natural England, was the presence of Eubank Woods Special Area of Conservation and Site of Special Scientific Interest, which is in the bottom half of the site, on quite a steep aspect, and is designated as an international designated site for its yew trees, of which there are many mature, beautiful mature yew trees. Quite impressive. It was really nice to experience that. And the beauty of this special area of conservation, or referred to as a SAC, is the element that it is so remote, and there wasn't really kind of established pathways in there. So in that consultation, Natural England was quite keen to make sure, or have some kind of study to see if an event like this would create desire lines, new pathways that then would become open to other recreational users, and put this type of site on the map and cause potential effects such as trampling. So the woodland is also known, it's an ancient woodland, for its lovely flora and lovely base-rich, nutrient-rich flushes along the stream sides. And this is just external to the site, but it gives you an idea of the general landscape, quite boggy, lots of trees, undulating, dry, freer draining slopes of bracken. Okay, so yeah, I like you guys, and I had to navigate this landscape, and the weather was very beautiful, so I did enjoy myself. So I just thought I'd show you a picture of the yew trees in the woodland. And actually, this was probably, this little stream down here just to the left was probably the most defined path in this woodland. So yeah, so I had to cover quite an extensive area of the landscape, and it was a bit like a needle in a haystack, but I did get a good feel of the type of habitats that were present. So that was woodland. There was low-lying areas with sphagnum moss, which is a key species in the formation of peat, and then the drier slopes, such as this, which are bracken covered. And just go back to that one because I want to come back to that slide. And lots of juniper, so very nice, and lightly grazed by sheep. So just 3 field survey visits were completed in the summer, and overall we were trying to find evidence of potential damage to habitats resulting from the British Orienteering event. That was planned on the 8th of May 2023. I hope I've got that date right, Emma. So as part of this process, Emma and myself consulted Natural England to establish their concerns, because essentially they're the overriding statutory body in the management of special areas of conservation and sites of special scientific interest. So it's really important that in order for these events to take place, where events are taking place on international or other designated sites, that we are working collaboratively together to take on the concerns or the interests or the possibilities of these sites from other stakeholders. So I think that's always a really good thing to undertake that consultation before an event. And so from this, Natural England raised concerns about formation of new design lines, which essentially to me is a non-defined public right of way that we often see the public where they walk the dogs. It becomes a regular walking spot. So and then their concerns, which are then become used by the recreational users, resulting in the loss of important ground flora and wide damage, then resulting from that, from other people then developing these design lines into something more permanent. And then that might bring in camping, mountain biking, fire instances. So it's the potential longer term effects of that. Compaction of tree roots, which is a really significant thing for trees, from lots of footfall of traffic, but foot traffic. But I know that this is not the case in your event, because I knew from learning from this it was very dispersed. But it's amazing what compaction to tree roots can do. Although I believe this was a low risk. And then general trampling of vegetation. If you've got some nice notable species and they were impacted, and their viability of seed dispersal would be affected. So they're the general main concerns for Natural England, and what we was looking for is essentially compaction, design lands, and then the effects on vegetation. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a visual view of my findings. First of all, because of the way that this event was designed, there was very little footfall within the special area of conservation. And because it was such an extensive landscape and all that footfall is dispersed and it wasn't going on regular permitted routes or developed routes, that dispersal was actually to the benefit of a site such as this, because there wasn't that consistent trampling. So essentially I didn't find any footfall in the special area conservation, which is great, but it didn't seem that there were many people going into that area. Okay, right. Where I did find it was external to the north of the special area of conservation. And here's just 2 examples of what I define as design lines. Not that bracken is a particularly, it's not, we're not really that concerned about any impacts on bracken, and actually opening up the soil profile here might give an opportunity for other species to colonise. And we can come back to birds and other species after this as well, but we just focus on habitats for now. So there was this type of thing, but again, it was very, very localized. And again, that's because it's quite a peaty soil and it's got quite lots of moisture. So it's understandable there's going to be some footfall desire lines, but this type of stuff, it would only take a year to recover. It wouldn't be significant. And then the next area was again in low-lying areas. This is very low-lying. There's two areas here. You can see this footfall here and here. Again, very localized, and it was confined to purple moorgrass, known as Molinia, and areas of sphagnum moss, so the peat-forming moss. And in these areas, they're potentially, although we didn't do a detailed botanical survey, there was potential for some quite nice species in here. And I'd say that these are the sensitive areas, and particularly the loss of sphagnum. So, yeah, but again, very localized, although still worth considering because sphagnum lowland bogs like this, even though are very small, are very unique habitats. So there's the evidence there. I take it that was probably the quickest route to a given control point. So no impacts in the special area of conservation, which is very good, although and localized impacts in wetted, low-lying, boggy areas on a very small scale. Everywhere else, not a problem. So resulting from that, and again in consultation with Natural England, just some kind of really clear parameters about how to move forward, especially if we want to do more surveys, and again open to suggestions because this is our only first preliminary study, so we're open to how this can be improved. So event planning, I know this is a difficult one, but thinking about the consistent trying to develop it in dry periods, which I believe that this was, I thought the timing of it was very well planned. Yeah, and we thought also in discussion with Emma that having a threshold of participants, for example, no greater than 250, and keeping that that program and that planning of dispersing as opposed to going along specific planned routes. I don't always know what your events are, but this one of the control points does allow for dispersion. Route planning, survey confirmed evidence of trampling within low-lying wet areas, purple moorgrass and sphagnum, which I've said, and future events to consider positioning control posts to divert foot traffic away from low-lying bogging areas. Fixed point photography. So we took photographs, but on such a landscape, that's very, very difficult. This scale of the event was very big for me to cover. But if there's sites where there's going to be a regular event, we can set up posts with numbers and do some fixed point photography before and after around areas where the footfall is perceived likely to be the largest. And that could give us some definitive, results in terms of whether or not we can see trampling or how wide that trampling is, and recovery as well. Yeah, really respecting our biodiversity assets. Obviously, we want people to visit these areas. There's so much to learn and experience the joy of the outdoors. And also within that is what can we do to minimise our impacts. So where possible, can we avoid these beautiful areas and just let nature have their place within them? And then desktop study data. I didn't know very much about this area. I don't know what the breeding bird ground nesting bird status is. I don't know about reptiles, invertebrates. So, with the breeding bird season, could events like this impact on notable ground nesting birds? So it's about learning more about an area and developing our knowledge so that together, all of us can plan our activities in a way that, in the first instance, avoids any potential impacts on some of our ground nesting birds, reptiles, and so on. Yeah, and that is pretty much it. And I think we're at a stage where Emma and I need to get our heads together and think about potentially what's next.
Yeah, absolutely.
How's that? Is that okay?
Perfect.
Thank you.
And apologies for the fact that my partner was in the background getting his tea ready. So I apologise to everybody who got a view of that. And I just wondered if we can pass over to get questions from members. One question I was going to start off with, if I could, Miranda, was to ask, one of the things we get quite a lot of our events applications refused on at the moment is for ground nesting birds or bird nesting season. And so I guess if we could have some sort of tips from you. So I just checked in my diary, by the way, and it was April the 8th, not May the 8th was the event.
Okay.
But yeah, I needed to check that as well. So quite a lot of our events are in spring. You know, and that's when we're getting landowners coming back and saying there's ground nesting birds or it's bird nesting season and things. So I just wondered about if there's anything that we could plan into events that would minimize any impacts.
Well, I mean, you know, certain species such as curlew, you know, these species are significantly declining. So it's all about where they're placed in the habitats, thinking about the habitats where these bird species are present. So, and it's not, you know, you could be running through an event and before you know it, because these eggs are so camouflaged, we've lost another, you know, an opportunity for curlew to expand its population. So it's thinking about where these birds are nesting and doing the kind of searches before and finding out, and then maybe, you know, if they were going through woodlands, there probably isn't going to be ground nesting birds in the same way, but in the open moorlands, intermediate moorlands, like on fields, we've got lapwing nests, you know, curlew, skylark. Is it possible that for those areas you say, you present a little map to your participants saying curlew ground nesting bird area, please avoid? That type of thing. It's just a way of trying to communicate as best as possible that these are the locations of where they're nesting.
Yeah, so understanding, I suppose, where they will nest. And I think it's interesting. Oh, I've just had a message say, could you stop sharing your screen now, please?
Sure,
Miranda?
thank you. I was going to ask that. Yeah,
thank you.
Good. Thank you.
So I guess it's understanding, and maybe that's the next piece of work. I mean, I will open up to members for questions in a moment, but maybe that's the next piece of work that we need to look at, is about habitats where birds are. Because I do know a lot of the emails I get from members is about our effect on during the bird nesting season, and sometimes we're just getting refused permissions out of hand, which, you know, is going to happen, I think, more and more. And I guess it's about us understanding the environments. It's interesting that you say it wouldn't be happening in forests. So ground nesting birds, I guess, are other habitats and not those. So I guess it's that I'm trying to say the next piece of work, I think it should be something around that, because that would help our members the most. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Do we have any further questions?
This is the bit where I briefly appear and just say, just as a reminder, so for any questions that you would like answering, you've got the options of the chat where you said your hellos before, the Q&A section. There are a couple in here already, so I'm happy to just crack on and ask those as well. We had one from Niall saying, what were the views from Natural England after the event? Were they happy that the temporary impact was acceptable? And also that he has a few more questions, which is very good.
Yeah, they were happy. I think they were happy that we were taking it on board and we were considering it and willing to address and take actions to help look into potential impacts and put that on the map and to increase everybody's awareness.
Excellent. And sorry, go on. Yeah. And then we had one from Stephen just asking, obviously, about the 250 participant limit, whether that was intended for the entire event, you know, the specific course, or whether that was around certain controls.
I think this may be able to comment on this, but I think it would be relative, in my view, to where the event is taking place. So in places like special areas of conservation, where you've got really wonderful ground flora that's important at international and national status, then we do need to consider numbers if the footfall is going to go into those areas. So it's all relative to landscape context, I guess. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, and I was one of the reasons we chose that particular event of the JK. We wanted a larger event to have the ecological assessment, and it was. That one is a really quite a sensitive site in terms of, so it's got the SAC and the SSSI on there, and we knew that those were significant. So I think it was to find out, and I think it's exactly as Miranda says, it's going to be more about the sensitivity of the site and all the special categorizations around it. So I think it's a site on site basis, and I think that we perhaps need to get a bit better understanding. I mean, I'm sure I'm absolutely convinced our mappers and planners understand the SAC and the SSSI and those types of things, but for us it was to get a real perspective of what that actually looks like, and for understanding things like sphagnum moss, because I know that is significant. So I know through working with Miranda that there are certain things that are, we really, our impact is more significant than in other areas, and so understanding our impact in bracken or sphagnum moss. So I guess it's difficult to answer, because I think it is a site-by-site basis, and I think that if we want to be able to meet halfway with landowners who might be saying no for whatever reason, then those might be the things that we have to consider. The size of the event would be one of them, I guess.
Yeah, perfect. And I think we've got another question in the chat, just sort of asking, I guess asking, for a comment or an opinion. If you catch your laptop well, have a good job. Just saying, O-ring events in Sweden, they usually have 20 to 21,000 participants. So, that's obviously.
Yeah,
wow.
And I think I've been working with so I'm part of the
It's incredible.
IOF Environment and Sustainability Commission, and quite often on meetings with them, I'll be talking about our work that we're doing in this area, and they'll be telling me that their biggest concern is stampeding moose. And I did think that was a bit one-upmanship on anything that I might be contributing from the UK, but they were saying that actually that is a real problem for them. They have to avoid the stampeding moose season, whatever that is. I'm all for it. I'm here all day for it. But I think they've probably got their considerations as well. And I know they've sent through a document that was a very large document about what their difficulties are and what they need to avoid in the different countries. It's fascinating, actually, because, as I say, that isn't to say we haven't got the things that we need to consider in our country, but I guess it's I guess they've got a bit better at understanding those seasons and what are those biggest concerns. But stampeding moose, yeah, we're here all day for that.
Brilliant. I'll make sure not to go out for any events if it's stampeding moose season. I'll keep just for my safety.
That free, yeah.
We have a question from Graham, who asks: upland areas are often grazed by sheep and cattle. Don't cattle cause as much damage in boggy areas over that longer period than perhaps a few orienteers visiting on a specific day?
That's a good question, Graham. I think where in these really nice pristine upland areas where they're designated sites, it's usually a conservation focused approach, where actually with the cattle with their hooves create what's called gap dynamics, and that can actually be quite favourable to the grassland plant communities. Conversely, where we have intensive grazing, such as like for beef and for milk with the Frisian cows, they're often already in agriculturally improved grasslands. So that's, those areas, where they're so intensive are probably less favourable for ground nesting birds anyway. Overgrazing is an issue in some areas and in some privately owned land. So yeah, it's about, I get what you're saying, but it's all depends again where it is. It's the stocking levels, its purpose, its motivation, the quality of the habitats, and usually in the kind of intermediate uplands, You know, so for example, nesting curlews are quite well respected, those nesting sites, and you know, there are increasing awareness to, you know, offer protection. But you know, there's other factors that are impacting them as well, and that's why, like, you know, predation from foxes, and this is why it's you know, we all have our part to play in trying to balance out our impacts: farming, us, recreation, predation, which, you know, all comes from us really, doesn't it? Because we have the power within us to make things good.
Brilliant, thank you very much. There's so many questions in. I really am. I'm going to make sure that I get to as many as possible. If I do miss yours, please feel free to tell me that, because I'm working backwards through a bit. So the next one, I believe, is probably a question for Emma specifically. So Niall asks, on a strategic level, are British Orienteering planning any discussions with Natural Resources Wales, as you know, as the English side doesn't really apply in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we are, and it's we're constantly sort of having discussions with different groups, different organisations, looking at the work they're doing. So we've been looking at working with Natural England on this one, and I have had conversations with Karina about impacts in Wales as well, and also our Northern Ireland and our Scottish, and you know, and working around all that way really. So this was, as we've said earlier on, this is the first foray into this really, and we want to be looking and understand. For example, just to throw this in there, we've had feedback that dunes are a really good place to orienteer because the dispersal, things like that. So that came from Wales. That piece of work came from Wales. So yes, we are, is the short answer. I'm getting animated now. I'm talking about future discussions because it's just so insightful. I find it really interesting. Some work that we were talking about in Wales was that there's bigger, you know, less concentrated populations, so bigger spaces, things like that. So we've got a lot of, you know, we've got a lot of different approaches and different information coming through. And yes, in short, yes, we will, and we will be having similar discussions in Scotland and in Northern Ireland, understanding the landscape there really in more than one sense. So yes.
Brilliant. I'll now contrast that with a question for Miranda, because it's nice to be able to go one each. Nikki was just asking, she wondered whether she missed part of the section before, but she was just inquiring about whether the site was visited before before the event, and just asking about when the results of the survey will be shared, so that also come back to Emma again. It's a team effort.
Yeah, I've produced a report which has been submitted to Emma. Over to you, Emma. Yeah. So
yeah, so Miranda went before. How was it, like a week before? I can't remember when you went there. Was it?
Seems a long time ago.
It was a long time. I think it was just a week before, and then I think it was at the time, and then you went after. So there was 3 visits. Yeah, so we did.
I know. Yeah, I know. I came on very much at the end, and I wanted to be present at the event because I wanted to see it for myself.
Yes,
I was quite excited by it. So
yeah, and that was good feedback for us to get rid. And actually, we did commission ecology resources earlier, but the person that was going to go wasn't available to go, and then, you know, and then Miranda brilliantly stepped into that for us. But from feedback from talking to Miranda, there are different things that we do differently next time, because obviously ecology is about people and environments and things like that. So it would be really useful for her to have seen the event, which we'll do next time. And yes, sorry, I think I keep cutting off. And yes, the findings will be shared. I was just keen that we were able to hear from Miranda. It's Miranda's work, so I was just keen that we were able to hear from her, and we will be putting together a piece on the website where we can share the findings, because you know, this is us really proud of this work, because this is us going out there and trying to find answers for the problems that come across my desk, certainly, about the problems that we're having as we're going out into these spaces. So yes, we will be sharing them after we've had this webinar. I keep seeing questions popping up in the top, and it distracts me.
I know. There's something I want to say, but I don't want to kind of dismiss any of the questions.
If you want to say something, Miranda, feel free to go for it. I'll work around.
I just want to say that when I I first got the map, it was one of your maps, and I had to convey that to Ordnance Survey. And then I wasn't partial to the actual control point routes. So I had this large site, and I just thought, oh my God, they're going to be running all over here. I'll go down this way. And I had a red line boundary, and I thought, is that the route? They're doing a circular. I didn't quite understand. So if, with honouring confidentiality about these routes, it would be helpful for it to be a more focused study to know where these control points are in advance of a survey. Yeah, because it was quite wide scale, and yeah, the more I know in confidence, the more focused and more planned and coordinated we can be together. Yeah, that was it. Thanks.
And I just also wanted to thank everyone who helped us enable this to happen, who did send through maps and things, because it was all a little bit last minute in the end, and it wasn't how we wanted to do it really. But we've learned from that and how we can move on. But I'm really grateful to the team there who were able to liaise with Miranda and get maps and things like that to her, regardless of them being embargoed, etc. So big thank you to them.
Yeah. Right.
Brilliant.
Questions.
There are plenty. We can absolutely we can go for as long as you like on this one.
Which is the most challenging?
I will go to the next one that I believe is from Elizabeth, which is did you look at how long after the event there's evidence of the increased footfall? So how soon, if ever, do the boggy areas return to their original state?
So we did a post-site visit. Haven't been back since, Emma, because I was only commissioned to do 3 visits. I'd quite happily go up there off my own back to have a look. But it's a really good question.
Yeah,
and it would be interesting to go back this spring. So it's like a post-year regrowth to see how that particular area has recovered. That would be very interesting. And if other species have come in as a consequence of the trampling. Because people carry seeds on their feet and, so on, and other species might come in that are more competitive. So, yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's put something in my head then that's what we'll ask Miranda to do, because that would that would finish it off nicely, I think. And I think it's missing from that data. So excellent question. And you've just cost British Orienteering some money, because we shall pay for Miranda to go back. So well done.
You'll come with me.
Yeah. And I think that answers Deborah's question as well along the similar lines. I'll go into the next one, possibly more towards Emma again. So from Nikki, saying obviously this year was very dry. Would you be looking to carry out another similar exercise this year, perhaps when Easter's earlier, so the in these different conditions?
Absolutely. So we're looking at whether it would be something like the JK this time or the JK next time, because then that would give Miranda more time to be part of sort of the planning, not part of it, but privy to it, if you like, to be able to see what's going on. So yes, and also very keen to understand our impacts in different habitats, I think, really as well, would be really useful, because whilst I'm really excited by this data, because we haven't had it before, and I like to have some data to work from. A landowner who doesn't have that, those particular habitats could well push back and say, well, that was during a dry season, and that was in that, so we need to stretch it out, and that's our work next, really, is to discuss with Miranda what events that we've got coming up, and how we can carry that on. And just to say, really, that Sweden was mentioned earlier on, and they're really interested in the work that we've done. So I'm so pleased that we were able to work with Miranda on this, and that we will continue to do so, because it's good live data. We have had information from the past, but we need to address the situation as it's happening now, and more events are getting reasons of environment and habitats put up there. So I think it's right that we address that. So yes, it was the answer, and we would look to do, if we did have a crystal ball and we could tell it was going to be a really wet spring, then then we could go out there and find out what's happening. So Miranda will be going out in all weathers by the looks of it. Perhaps we'll do one in snow. Do we orientate in snow? We'll have a look in that as well. So yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah, I think that also covers off potentially, Trevor. I think that obviously covers off some of your question as well, about saying that it was during a dry period and it could have been different again. So if you do want, if you do have another comment on it, feel free to add that in as well. Not that I don't think I'm glossing over at all, just hoping that that's been covered. Stephen has another question, which is just wondering a bit around the sort of the limiting participants, why it's at a specific number. Just wondering, so if the courses weren't available before the event, did you, Miranda, review the participants per course leg or per control loading? That might need a bit of assistance either way.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I mean, the thing is, wasn't really privy to, I knew roughly of numbers, that was about it. And in terms of the control points, a series of dots on a large scale map where I did my best to visit those areas. But again, it was due to the scale. So it was difficult to do that. So it was a matter of trying to cover as much ground as possible through zigzagging and moving around, and very undulating. So it was based on that, on a visual assessment, really. But I was just thinking it might be a good idea to establish some kind of standard monitoring approach through tabulated data that could be used as a comparable basis with the fixed point photography to really hone in for repeated events, so that there is actually a development of data being collated, and then, and maybe increasing our capacity to do GIS mapping, and what's the word, and comparative, maybe with some graphs or something, something visual. If that kind of answers your question. I don't know, Emma might be able to add to that.
I think, yeah, so it was kind of about the numbers, I think, wasn't it? I think we were, I remember us having conversations with Pin at Natural England as well, and I think that I think it's different. I guess I wouldn't want people to get hooked on that number, that's what we're saying is now the right thing to do going forward. I think we were working on a number of assumptions on this particular event. I don't think, and it's certainly, I certainly sort of want to give a little bit of a push. This wasn't about us looking at our impact negatively necessarily. It was just to try to understand what it is. So it wasn't about us saying that this is a necessarily just all negative. It was about us trying to understand so that we could push back a little bit with landowners, because our sport's unique and because we don't stick to paths and we don't do all of those types of other things. So it was important that we have just sort of getting some sort of an idea of the size. It was more to get an idea of the size of the event and the amount of people that might be going through an area. So I guess I wouldn't want people to get hung up on that. That's what we're now saying is the right amount for an area. It's going to be on a site by site specific, and we'll probably look at an event next time that has more people there. I mean, who knows? Miranda and I might trolley off to Sweden and have a little look over there at the 21,000 event. So I mean, it was just more about this particular one and working with what we did. And again, I do need to push back that Miranda really got put in at the last minute really to do this piece of work for us and has done a sterling job, but it wasn't how we would have done it. Ideally, we did try to notify the ecologist earlier on, but it's all learning, isn't it? And that's where we're at really. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much both. We have a question from Rob, saying maybe it doesn't apply in this case, but how concerned are you about the spread of pathogens of trees, for example, and how effective are mitigations, sort of washing footwear, disinfectant? Some are perhaps not particularly affected by orienteering events, but spread is unavoidable anyway, such as with ash dieback.
Yeah. I mean, ash dieback is so widespread, and I believe it's airborne, but it's really good. And I think biosecurity is really important, certainly in my line of work. Biosecurity is a whole high on our risk assessments and policies. So, we all we use Virkon and like little spraying of our shoes before we go out or swap shoes. So it's a really valid point actually, because there's a lot of people out there coming from all different geographical locations, and it's an important thing to consider. So I do that. Virkon it is, diluted tablets, when we're doing ponds, especially through watercourses, because those things can be transported. So, yeah, very good point. In terms of trees, yeah, I'm thinking of like spores and fungal fruiting infections and those things, and invertebrates. So I think it's more about what we bring in on our feet and impacts there. But yeah, really good point. And maybe that's something, I don't know if British Orienteering have anything on biosecurity.
No, I don't think so. I do know that we have had experience recently, and I must do a huge shout out to Derwent Valley Orienteers and Ranald. We were refused permission for a site of Severn Trent because of ash dieback, because there was a possibility that the trees could come down, or that they hadn't done an assessment on all the trees. So. Yeah. Absolute shout out to Ranald and DVO, and I have asked him when he gets chance to write up that whole experience, because it was very interesting. It took over a year, I believe, for us to get the permission, but it went from a firm no to a yes with conditions, which is what we'd always expect. So we were aware of it from that perspective, which I think is actually more sort of looking at it from a legal perspective of getting, hit on the head by a tree. But I think it's a key point, and I have made a little note of it about biosecurity, because I think it's absolutely right. But I have heard that in the past there has been events where people have rinsed their shoes when they've gone in and things like that. So it's all things that we will inevitably have to consider as we move forward. I haven't heard of any other. The sort of felling in woods and things like that around certain ones. I think there was a pine sort of disease that somebody was talking about, but mainly we have had feedback about the ash dieback. But it's a really good point. Yeah,
Forestry Commission have got some really good biosecurity information on their website, and they have little printouts as well. So yeah, because I mean, this all came firstly. This biosecurity really became heightened in the foot and mouth time, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good. I'll have a look at that. Thank you very much.
Good one.
Brilliant. I have still what feels like so many questions, which is fantastic. Let me have a quick look at this one. So Niall asks, as we have many events all over the country, different times of year, weather conditions, are there any simple data gathering points that planners or organisers could do to catch some useful info, such as photos of before and after, just to help broaden the data capture?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in here because actually in the New Forest, again, big shout out to Southampton Orienteers and orienteering clubs around there. They were asked, while the New Forest was going through a habitat regs assessment, they were asked to take photographs of the control sites before and after. I think for a year, they did that for every control site. So we have that photographic evidence already, but it was sort of it is useful, of course, but I think what we needed to understand was, I think just the photos of the sites didn't actually give me anyway. I'm sure Miranda looking at it would be able to understand what the habitats were and things like that. But I think it's a useful thing for people to have in their back pocket, because it shows that we are considering. Well, it just shows that we're amenable to working with landowners, for one. That's what happened with the New Forest and with Forestry England, and they were really impressed by the data. So yes, I would ask. I wouldn't want people it to become another thing that volunteers have to do on events and things like that. I guess for me, the hope is that working with Miranda moving forward is that we could just find that there's areas that perhaps we don't put a control point, because if it is sphagnum moss or something like that that's really sensitive, that we could understand the habitats a little bit more. That would be my thinking. Again, I just don't want to add more work to people who I know are doing an incredible amount to get the event on in the first place. But any extra data is extra data, and it's very helpful. So thank you.
Excellent. And I will just say that if there is a question from Liz that I'm holding till the end, because I think it's quite nice. It's quite a nice final question, so I'm keeping hold of that one. So don't worry, Liz, if you are wondering why it's been lost. Don't worry at all. I'll just take one from Deborah, sort of on the just on the participant limit thing again. I think this, sort of to round this off, is just asking whether, obviously with a participant limit, is that suggesting that it would be you'd have an overall limit on the participants for the entire event, or whether it would just be a limit of the number of people going to a single point, for example?
Do you want to take that, Miranda, or?
I guess if you're thinking about the site that we've just done now, so let's say in your planning for sake that at this particular site you had 50 control points in special area conservation and you had 10 control points outside, then we'd be looking to say, hey, it's not quite right. Let's reduce that to 5 control points in the special area conservation and put the other points outside, out of that, in areas where there is less footfall in that international designated site. So it's about having a little bit of control of the control sites and how the anticipated, where people trying to anticipate maybe where they would run in order to get there. So I think with sites like that, then there would be a certain amount of pre-planning to try and reduce, or those levels of footfall in those sensitive areas.
I think from the work that we did with Pin from Natural England, if I remember rightly, that's exactly what she was asking that we do. Those sites that have those special designations, there's always going to be consideration to that given. So I guess we need to minimize our impacts in those areas. So we couldn't, just front load and put all the controls in that particular area. It's just about balancing with the whole site. So as I say, please don't anybody think that that's us now sending a message out. Everybody needs to do it. Was just with working with what we had for that particular event. But moving forward, we can have a look at site by site really, but I think we just got to be considerate of these incredibly sensitive sites, and that we can orienteer in there at all sometimes amazes me with the designations that are on there, but that's what we need to be looking at, I guess, moving forward.
I'll go a different way. Obviously there are some questions in the chat or some general discussion points that are sort of on things we've already covered. So I'm going to try and focus for now. If in the interest of Emma and Miranda and everybody on the Friday evening, there are some points that I will actually collect in an email and then just put forward to Emma and Miranda for further comments. So there will be everything covered, but I'm just going to pick a couple of different questions now, just that are away from the topics that we've already covered, at least to an extent. So the one that we have next from Bob, which is Miranda, what do you feel towards mountain bikes using woodland/moorland areas, especially when they go off designated routes?
I've done it myself for a start. I think it's all about the people that are undertaking this. I mean, I'm very much open to open access and exploring. It's really exciting. I'm a bit like that myself. But there's also that part of me is like, oh my God, they're damaging this, because I'm aware, I've developed that awareness of that sensitivity. So I'm kind of two halves. It's all about the people, and it's the attitude and the culture of the people that are underdoing those activities, and the awareness within it, and knowledge, and the kindness in which that's undertaken. And for me, it's all about that, and being receptive and willing to understand and make changes if and where they're necessary for the greater good.
I think from my perspective, we do in a few sites we are in conflict with that activity, with mountain biking, and we have been. So near me, I'm not sure which club Bob's with, but near me in Shining Cliff Woods in the Derwent Valley.
I know the one.
We've now been. We can't orienteer on that site because of the mountain biking and things like that. So we are in conflict. I'm not sure if I've frozen again. Might be me. Hang on.
Still all right.
Oh, okay. We are in conflict with that activity, and we are coming together over the next couple of weeks to talk to endurance GB, horse riding and mountain biking outdoors, to see, because we're competing for the same spaces sometimes, and sometimes whereas with orienteers, most of our orienteers are members and are committed to presenting the sport in a positive way. With mountain biking, it's not the same relationship with the NGB, I don't think. So we are trying to, sometimes we're competing in the same areas and not coming out very favourably, unfortunately.
Oh dear, it's a bit like the canal path then, isn't it?
Yeah,
where I lived. So yeah, because as a biking, it can be quite intimidating, can't it? So yeah, okay.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you, Bob.
We have one from Nikki, which might be sort of a general comment towards Emma, which is she's mentioning that she has SOA members, and I'm sure they're more in the larger BOF membership who work in ecology. And would it be worth putting heads together to discuss how best to monitor or impact points for orienteering? I know that obviously that's straight into your line, Emma, so I'll let you take that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, yeah, I want to say yes. I think what we've realised with working with Miranda is that there's so much more that we can be doing in this area, and actually it's become I think it's become sort of, well, certainly for my line of work, it's become quite important in the strategic plan moving forward that we understand the environments that we want to orienteer in, and our effects. So if we've got that sort of intelligence base out there, then absolutely we will tap into that. And yeah, I just want to say, yeah, big yes. That's what I want to say to that question, I guess.
Fantastic. I'm just taking another leaf through before I hand over. On Trevor has just posted in the chat about the IOF report, just to share. So that's also a good resource if people do want to have a look in the chat, if you have access to it. If not, then feel free to pop any one of us an email and we'll get that over to you. What I'll do is I'll round up now with the last one from Liz, and after this question I'll give a quick roundup of what to do for any more questions. So Liz's question is: it's very easy to feel that orienteering negatively impacts an environment, but there are positive aspects that we can emphasize. But are there positive aspects that we can emphasize when we're talking to landowners? Miranda mentioned desire lines opening up the environment to other species. What other things come out of our review and from experience would be good, to really positively frame orienteering to these landowners?
You want to go first, Miranda?
You go first. I'm still thinking. Yeah, I totally agree, because I mean it's inevitably a positive and respectful sport. So yeah,
absolutely. And I think, well, there's a few things that spring to mind for me. So the positivity of us, so some things that have come up on applications for permissions is the fact that we are out in those environments for a start. So you might see a broken bridge or something like that. So there's things that we can report back to the landowners as a result of us being out in those environments. But I think one of the biggest things that I think whenever I see an orienteering event, it's absolutely immaculate when we leave. And I think that there is the fact that actually one of our lovely aspects that we should promote more of is just how sensitive to the environments our orienteers are. And I say again, our orienteers are members. They're members of clubs. They're members of BOF. They're members of. We are a community. We're not rogue. We're not out there just doing our own thing. We're out there enjoying those environments and totally respecting them. So that might not be the answer on a sort of scientific basis, and I'd leave that, I guess, to Miranda about what But we do know, we are learning, I think, through this work, that we can have positive effects. I'd go back to that sand dunes one, which is an initial study that somebody's working on at the moment. I think that was Wales, that was saying that actually by disturbing, we can have a really positive effect in that environment. I think, I mean, I'll come back. I'm absolutely not going to start talking about things that is in Miranda's area of expertise, but somebody talked to me once about bracken and breaking it and things like that in the environment by us running around. So I have absolutely no doubt that there are positive effects for us being there. But I guess I'll go to Miranda's much better insight into that field, really, to quantify that. But those would be my starters for 10, I guess.
Yeah, I think basically, there's activities that are positive in that you know, they can build a good relationship with landowners, because they can essentially, we're custodians, and that we're looking out and we're reporting on anything that is untoward on these landscapes. So in some respects, I think events like this have the potential to be those eyes of care for the landscape and all the species and the, you know, the domestic animals that are in them. So I think it's all about developing a good rapport and knowledge, and just showing respect. And you know, when I went back, I didn't see anything in terms of rubbish, and I just thought that was just wonderful. You know, that is such a rare thing. And I think I did speak to a landowner, and you know, he was really good. He said, "Oh yeah, they're going to park in our car park, and yeah, they'll be here." And then you're gone, you won't even know they're here. He said. So it's yeah,
Absolutely.
you know, it's respect, isn't it? Which, you know.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
perhaps that is something that we need to gather the data on a little bit more, is about that actually we've got quite a lot of landowners who are really, really, really happy for us to run events on their land, because they know that we will be respectful and that we will take everything home with us, and that we, you know, I've seen the events that they turn up the event management side and everybody's there, and then nobody's there and it's all gone, and we are incredibly respectful and appreciative of the environment. So I think perhaps some of that is a bit about data that we need to collect as well, a little bit, and help in those discussions. But I think it'd be really key to get some members' voices on that. So Ranald's about this work that he's been doing with Severn Trent and the ash dieback, and how we managed and mitigated any issues on that, I think. So I think there's a little bit, I keep saying this at the moment at British Orienteering, so Joe and Howard will be rolling their eyes. We need to start collecting a bit more data about these things, I think, because then we have it doesn't an argument, but then we have something to push back on, to say, actually, this is what we do, and this is what we consider, and this is what we've worked on elsewhere. So more work, I guess, for me, yay, to find out and get more data on these things, so that we can equip you with the answers going forward, to be able to continue with the negotiations that you're having with landowners out there. So yeah,
Sorry for the dog.
Yay! Hello.
We always welcome extra presenters on the meeting. Don't worry at all.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh.
So I think in terms of the main questions that we have in the chat, I think that about wraps us up. What I've already done, for those who've put in a comment or a question that hasn't necessarily been answered, I've already assembled those into an email, which I'm going to send to Emma and Miranda for comment. What I will do now is I'll share in the chat the email addresses of myself, Howard, Emma and Miranda, as well as a couple other important links, so you can get in touch. And what I'll do is I'll make sure to collate all these questions that go through, just as an opportunity to get them put alongside the YouTube session as it's uploaded, because, you know, it's important that if everybody has these questions, that, you know, everybody can see actually what's been asked and what's been answered. So I'll make sure to get all those rounded up, and any other questions that you do have, you can also put on the feedback form, which I'll be sending out tomorrow, and I'll get those questions over to Emma and Miranda as well. Yeah. But in that case, I'd like to wish a huge thank you to Emma and Miranda for this excellent session. It has been absolutely brilliant and very informative, and the amount of questions that we've had is absolutely brilliant as well. So a huge thank you to everybody attending for giving up the time. Miranda?
I just wanted to acknowledge, I'm sure that within this group, there's a lot of good natural historians in here already. I'm sure of it. Thank you. Yeah.
No, and if I could as well, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Miranda and for everyone who's joined this evening, because it's a Friday night and I'm sure you've got much more exciting things to be doing, but it is much appreciated. Well, I haven't, yeah. So, but it was more just to say that this conversation is ongoing. Please do just get in touch with.
Yep.
Over the next few days with anything, and even to give us a bit of direction about what you want us to look at next, because we're always open to that. And actually, the environments that you orienteer in, so please do come back to us to say, well, actually, that'd be really interesting, or vice versa. And before we know it, Miranda will be an orienteer and she'll be with us all the time. We'll be able to step into that, and the dog,
and that control point first.
No, that's absolutely. Thank you both so much, and it's really good to have such a good and interactive session as well. and it'll be good. So this will all has been recorded, as I mentioned before, and will be on YouTube on Monday. And I'll also be following up with an email on Monday as well, just with any extra information from the session, some odds and ends that go out to everybody, and that should be with you. So if anybody's had technical issues, missed anything, I'll also make sure to attach the slides as well for the presentation. And the last thing on my list is to shamelessly plug next week's first session on Monday, which is safeguarding with Peterbrook and CPSU. Oh, sorry, you came through a bit delayed there, I think, Emma. So that was sounded a bit like I'd spoken to Optimus Prime. Yeah. So I'll shamelessly plug that safeguarding meeting, which I don't think will nearly be as exciting as this one, but you never know. So that's not the best advert for it, but it is important, that we do have, all attendees from clubs up to date with everything safeguarding related. But apart from that, I'd like to wish you all a big thank you again. Thank you to the presenters. Thank you to everybody attending, and enjoy the rest of your Friday night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye, Emma. Thank you, Joe.